or sooner if the breakout end early. I did hit mute all. If more folks come on, if I have to do it one more time, we will mute everyone, and the ground rules will let you know if you're dialed in how to come off mute. But just for reference, that is *6, and we'll mention it multiple times. Just some orientation on this meeting. This meeting and the breakout sessions will be and are being recorded. We ask everyone again to stay on mute. The materials have been posted online. Not sure if they're posted on the Oregon side yet, but they are at least on the Washington side for the North Falcon website. Plus, we distributed them through the compact distribution. So hopefully everyone has the materials. Far as orientation, how to use Teams, we will not be using the chat function for questions or comments. It will be verbal only. However, if you have technical difficulties, you can put your question in there and we will have staff try to assist you. That being said, when the time, and I'll get through the ground rule, but when the time is appropriate, we'll ask for comments, but largely we'll go through the staff presentation first. So, we're gonna I'm gonna walk through this agenda first real quick, and then we'll go through introductions, ground rules, and etc. So we have this introduction piece for 20 minutes. Then we will move on to this year's fisheries, which will start off with just a review of what we did at the previous meeting, far as our forecast, conservation objectives, policy guidance, and considerations for this year's fisheries. We will provide a modeling update of what we heard from last time, and so that you have you can see what staff pulled together based on some input and what our guidance and conservation objectives push us towards accomplishing. We do have a small USV Oregon co-manager report, and then after all that, then we will take public questions or comments on the materials that were reviewed already for this year's fisheries, and then we will take a break to get reoriented for the breakout sessions. So the recreational group will stay on this line, so you don't have to get off the line. You'll just stay on here, and that will walk through the main stem fisheries. Plus, there will also be a tributary handout. That's a separate packet or separate handout that you received. And then after staff presentation, they'll be open for questions, comments, thoughts. At the same time, those interested in the commercial breakout session will switch to a different line, and they'll walk through Fall, Chinook, and Coho fisheries through staff presentation and then public comments. And all these meetings will be recorded, just reminding you all. At the conclusion, we will not come back to the main session. The breakout sessions will end. And then we will take the information we heard, look at the modeling, and as necessary, adjust up or down to achieve our conservation goals and policy objectives. So we're taking public input to put staff in a better place as we go into PFMC 2. And our intent is to come out of this with one option moving forward. Results, once North of Falcon concludes, will be posted online at the 2 websites provided in the agenda. So with that, I'm going to go back up, and we're going to do a staff introduction. So why don't we start on the Oregon side this time? Oregon staff first. Go ahead and introduce yourselves.
I'm Chris Kern, ODFW Deputy Fish Division Administrator here. Morning, everybody.
Tucker Jones.
Hi. I have a quick comment of importance.
Who is this?
I wonder if other people. Hi, this is Rick Legride, advisory.
Okay.
I can't get into the link, the click here to join the meeting link, and I have been able to in the past, and the link seemed to be dead. I don't know if anybody else is having that problem. I'm on the phone at this point, but I can't do it through the app. So I just thought that might be an issue.
Yeah, thanks, Rick. We'll circle back to that in a second. Let's finish up staff introductions, but thanks for
Yeah,
flagging
no,
that.
thanks for the heads up, Rick. Ryan, can Mertice work to help him while we go through staff introductions?
Yep. Well,
Thank you.
thanks.
So this is Tucker Jones, Ocean Salmon Columbia River Program Manager for the Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife.
John North, Trees Manager, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife.
This is Jeff Whistler, Oregon Department of Fish and Wildlife. I'm the Assistant Columbia River Fisheries Manager.
All right. Any USVO Oregon co-managers, staff, CRITFIC, federal agencies, NOAA staff on the line? So Jeremy, you're on mute, it looks like. *6 or unmute. All right, I guess we can circle back in a bit. So WDFW staff, I'll start off. I'm Ryan Lothrop, Columbia River Fishery Manager with the Columbia River Management Unit based out of Olympia. And other WDFW staff, can you announce yourself?
Hello, Tim Sipple, Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife, Columbia River Management Unit, fishery analyst.
Quentin Doherty, WDFW, fisheries management biologist.
This is Cindy LaFleur with WDFW, working the fish program in Region 5.
This is Charlene Hurst. I'm the Columbia River Management Unit Lead for WDFW.
This is Oswald Watts, District 10 Fisheries Biologist, WDFW, emphasis on the Cowlitz and Lewis watersheds.
And hi, this is Bryce Glasser. I'm the Southwest Washington Fish Program Manager for WDFW.
And I'm Matt Gardner, District 9 Fish Biologist, WDFW in Ridgefield.
Hi, this is Wendy Bigley. I'm the Ocean Salmon Fishery Manager with WDFW.
Good morning, this is Kyle Vandegraff, also with WDFW and also with Ocean Fisheries.
All right, and we have two other staffers on board to help with administrating this and keeping this meeting running. That's Mertice Dobler. She's kind of our lead tech guru and will kind of help with technical difficulties. I'm sure she's working with Rick right now. And then we have Ben Anderson, who's with public affairs. So I think that's it for WDFW staff.
Ryan, I have no way to really help Rick because he's on the phone. So anything I have, I would put in the chat and he cannot reach that. I've checked the link in the document we sent out this morning compared to the link I used to connect in, and they appear to be the same. They're very long, so I haven't gone over letter by letter. But the best I would have for Rick is to perhaps restart his computer and try again. And if he can, give me an email. I'm not sure how to really get that except by spelling it out for him, and that's a long name. So I don't know if anyone has if Rick has contact to me, Mertice Dobler. He's probably received emails from through the listserv, so that is a challenge. So I'm brainstorming how to help, but I have not helped him at present.
Okay, thank you, Mertice. On that note, I just forwarded you his email, so you can maybe get in touch. I've also, just for everyone's benefit, I don't have any other messages from anyone else having difficulty getting on, so I'm just going to check with Oregon staff. Have you heard of others having difficulty?
No.
Okay.
Yeah, none here.
Okay. Hopefully it's unfortunately for Rick, it's affecting him. We'll do what we can, but I think we'll have to keep moving forward. All right. Last call on other staff. Any additional introductions?
Hey, Ryan, this is Jeremy. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
All right. So just want to do a sound check. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. So moving forward on the agenda, moving to ground rules. So this is business as usual, same as the previous meeting. Please focus at the task at hand, stick to the agenda. So we're talking about this year's fisheries, not previous year fisheries. Staff may close public comment early to stay, or not early, but close public comment to stay on schedule with the agenda if necessary. We ask only one person to speak at a time. So in order to get your name on the speaking list, when I make that announcement, provide your name or raise your hand virtually, and I'll put you on the list and we'll circle back around to get the comments or questions. Be respectful of others. Mute your phone. If you're on the phone, because we did mute you all, you'll probably have to use *6 to unmute yourself. So we'll try to remind you when that time is right. Be tough on issues and questions, but not on people or organizations. No personal attacks, insults, or threats. Be in a listening mode. Speak and act professionally. Allow for a balance of speaking time. So take into consideration of the number of times you comment on each topic. So we may call on those who haven't provided any testimony. If you've already provided testimony, then we can, if there's additional time, circle back to you. I mentioned chat functions will not be used for comments or questions except to address technical difficulties, and anyone and everyone can provide additional public comment at the link provided. I don't necessarily have the end date of when that closes, but assume basically, well, sooner the better in getting us comments, but I believe that link will run through at least sorry, I'm looking at the calendar to make sure, at least through April 9th. So with that, just going to check in with staff. Anything else on the agenda or process? All right, hearing none, we'll get started. So I'm going to go ahead and take myself off webcam camera so I can get us going. So I'm going to pull up the handout. So 1 second while I do that. Oops, sorry. 1 second, got too many files. Sorry, I got the wrong thing going on. I'm just gonna. All right, can I get a check to see that the handout is being displayed?
That's what I see.
Okay, sorry about that. Something funky happened on my end, so I think we're good now. So this will be a brief introduction, walkthrough, kind of review what we did last time. So just bear with us. We probably do have some new callers in, want to reorient everyone where we are for this year. So for those on the phone, we'll walk through the handout verbally so you can follow along, but hopefully you have the handout as well to follow along as we move forward, and we'll provide what page number we're on. So starting on page 1 at the top, under the forecast, conservation objectives, policy guidance and considerations, we'll start with Upper Columbia summer Chinook. So this year's pre-PFMC forecast is 77,600 fish. For Washington, Oregon policy guidance, they are currently not concurrent. The Oregon policy for below Priest Rapids has an 80% recreational sharing and 20% commercial, while Washington has a 70% recreational and 30% commercial. So staff have modeled 70% recreation and 20% commercial with 10% unallocated. Current policy does not allow commercial, or current policy is not concurrent on gears. So Oregon rules does not allow gill nets in the summer. Washington does not. So no consideration of gill net fisheries are expected to occur. This year's run size is improved from recent years and should provide for recreational fishing opportunities in all areas. The first in-season update occurs around July 1st. So moving on to sockeye, this year's forecast is 155,600, which is about 70% of the 10-year return. We have a 1% non-treaty impact rate, which equates to 1,556 fish for fisheries downstream of Highway 395. So again, this is just a review of last time, moving through quickly on this. Upriver summer steelhead, this year's forecast with Skamania, A index and B index is about 101,000 fish. A index is 89,200, of which 27,500 are wild. B index is 7,600, of which 1,000 are wild. The non-treaty fishery impact rate is 2% on both wild A and wild B index fish. Given the poor expected returns for upriver summer steelhead, and in particular for wild B index fish, recreational and commercial fisheries will be managed conservatively. So moving on to fall Chinook policy guidance. So current guidance on fall Chinook is concurrent with the most constraining fall Chinook stock. Given the forecasted abundances, both states allow for no more than 70% of the impact to be allocated to recreational fisheries and not less than 30% to commercial fisheries. And gill nets are allowed in zones 4 and 5. Additionally, the Oregon rule limits impacts for lower river alternative gear to 2 percentage points of the commercial allocation. And to clarify, that alternative gear allocation equates to 6.7% of the commercial total allocation. So 2% of the total, 6.7% of the commercial allocation is what the alternative gear Oregon rule is. So bottom page 1 still, current guidance on for recreational fishery objectives is not concurrent. Washington policy does not provide any specific guidance, while the Oregon policy does and is on the top of page 2. So top of page 2 for buoy 10 to tongue point, the objective for Chinook fishery retention season is August 1st through Labor Day, of which 34 days would be part of that, assuming Labor Day would be September 3rd. From Tongue Point to Warrior Rock, the fishery is August 1st through September 7th as non-mark selective, and an additional week of mark selective September 8th through the 14th, totaling 45 days. From Warrior Rock to Bonneville Dam, it is August 1st through October 31st, which is 92 days. If the established objectives for main stem recreational fisheries are predicted to be met, additional opportunity for main stem commercial fisheries shall be provided. And additionally, there is an adaptive management provision that allows for consideration of an impact neutral fishery modification. So mark selective versus non-mark selective regulations in recreational fisheries, for example. So we'll come back to that later on. So moving on to lower Columbia River Tule fall Chinook, the forecast is 73,100 adults. The total allowable exploitation rate in the ocean and in river is 38.0% as a max. The current Columbia River harvest rate target that we're using in the modeling that we'll be providing is 15%, which equates to roughly 11% exploitation rate. Most constraint, the LRH, the Tule fall Chinook, are the most constraining fall Chinook for in-river 2021 fisheries. And northern fishery inputs, such as Alaska and Canada, have not been updated yet, but are expected to be available by PFMC2. So those are ongoing, and we'll know more when we get to PFMC2 and what additional changes occurred with northern fisheries being updated. For Snake River Wild and Upriver Bright Fall Snook, the forecast is 354,200 adult upriver brights. And based on the preseason upriver bright and Snake River Wild forecast, the allowed non-treaty in-river harvest rate is no greater than 15%. Recent initial in-season run size updates in mid-September have generally been below the final upriver bright run size, averaging around 80% of the final return estimates for 2018 through 2020. So moving on to Columbia River Coho. The ocean abundance forecast, so these are pre-fisheries, is 1,590,000 adults, of which 1 million, roughly 1 million are early stock and about 576,000 are late stock. Total ocean and Columbia River exploitation rate limit, given the matrix and survival rates, is 30% on lower river natural coho. And to compare that to last year, that would have been 18%. So we are in a higher tier for allowable exploitation rate. Under the policy, LCN coho impacts are prioritized to select area fisheries, main stem commercial Chinook fisheries, and for Oregon, commercial hatchery coho fisheries, and then by both states, additionally followed by recreational fisheries, and then coho directed main stem commercial fisheries for both Oregon and Washington. So there's a slight difference between the two states. Current Oregon and Washington policy guidance regarding allowable commercial gears is not concurrent. Oregon rules do not allow the use of 6-inch gill nets for coho directed fisheries, while Washington policy does. So with that, moving on to the bottom of page 2, we will move into the modeling update and rationale and assumptions. So John, I think you're up on this, is that correct?
Yeah, thanks, Ryan. I'll try and step through this. It's not too long. So we wanted to kind of just give people an idea of where we were at since the last meeting. So the modeling that's included in this packet incorporates the FRAM output from PFMC number 1, alternative 1B. Sound check, is there feedback?
There is a little.
I just muted somebody, so let's see if it's corrected.
Okay. And also noting on that alternative 1B FRAM run that does exceed currently the LRH limit at 38%. Alaska and Canada fishery inputs have not been updated yet and may result in reduced availability for LRH for in-river fisheries. We just have to see how that plays out. For LRH, the modeling for in-river fisheries, as Ryan noted, we are this model is targeting a 15% in-river harvest rate, which is somewhere around 11% exploitation rate. We are using the full 15% Snake River Wild upriver bright harvest rate limit. We're right up close to that. And then on the LCN coho, we're around 11% ER for combined ocean and in-river fisheries. So on page 3, since that last North of Falcon Columbia River meeting, staff has reviewed the input we received at that meeting, and that we've listed that input on the last half of the page on page 3. We tried to consider and adjust to some of the requests that were within our control, and try to create the best package we could within those requests and our current policy guidelines and the conservation objectives, which we use collectively to develop the updated Chinook model that's included in our packet below, specifically preseason North of Falcon 2. This model is a bit different from the North of Falcon 1 model, but it provides improved opportunity compared to recent years and includes Chinook retention opportunity throughout the entire river from the mouth upstream to Highway 395 bridge at Pasco. we have two main objectives that we have to work within in this modeling. The primary objective relates to allocation, where no less than 30% of the most constraining Chinook stock, which in this case is Lower River Hatchery, no less than 30% of it is available for commercial fisheries and no more than 70% for recreational fisheries. And the secondary objective is to try and achieve the recreational fall fishery objectives described in the Oregon policy pertaining to the area and season length for Chinook retention, which also guided our modeling. So a little more detail, in order to achieve the Chinook retention season objectives at buoy 10, which in the Oregon rule is open through Labor Day, we did have to include some mark selective fishery due to the overall LRH constraints. We have used mark selective fisheries in the past at buoy 10 during 2013 to 16 to achieve the objective. For Tongue Point to Warrior Rock, which in this model run is modeled as non-mark selective, we feel that meets the intent of the Oregon objectives for fall recreational seasons, using an adaptive management approach to achieve an impact neutral fishery compared to the full season described in the fall season objectives. So non-mark selective version of that fishery. And then for Warrior to Bonneville Dam, that meets the objectives of Chinook retention through the end of October. And we also have reserved enough Chinook mortalities to cover Coho directed fisheries as requested. All these viable options must fit within allowed impact rates for Wild A index and Wild B index steelhead. So we need to monitor that as we work through our modeling. As I mentioned, we just kind of listed on the bottom of page 3 all the things we heard at the last meeting. I won't go through those, just those were what we heard, and so we tried to fold all that into a new model, which we included on page 4. And this is our current model, and it is a bit complex. The lower half of the model provides a very detailed output for each of the individual fisheries. But if we focus on the top half, on the right-hand side, we have some outputs for non-treaty catch sharing, so that you can see on the LRH impacts, we were able to, we modeled this at 30% commercial and 70% sport, so that meets the allocation guidance. The total there is 10.72, about 11 as we mentioned, but we're basically solving to that 15% LRH harvest rate. In terms of Snake River impacts, the sharing there would be 63% sport, 37 commercial. We're right at the 15% limit. We also provide the sharing on bright Chinook, sport and commercial, and then total Chinook in main stem fisheries. Off to the left-hand side, we do provide our management guidelines and where these models, the output of these models compare. So on the non-treaty, as I mentioned, we have that 15% maximum allowed on Snake River Wild, and this model puts us right there at 14.95. We do note there that the LRH ocean in-river exploitation rate based on that alternative 1B is over the 38%, but that's a fluid thing, so we'll have to track that. Kind of some other measures there. We believe we'll be well under the 2% allowed for Wild B index steelhead. We don't have it plugged in there, just less than 2. Also on chum, we know we'll be well less than the 5% allowed. So I think that's about all I was going to cover on this MR Chinook model. And then on the next page, we provided our current Coho catch and impact summary based on Fram Run 212B is noted here. We have a catch summary and then also an exploitation rate summary by fishery component, and we provide total catch and or mortalities, and then the breakout of the unmarked and marked catch. Overall, we're ocean and in-river combined at about a little over 11% exploitation rate based on the inputs here. So I think that, Ryan, that brings us to the breakout session point almost, I think.
Correct, it does. So if that's all you have, John, and I think you covered it well, I just wanted to do a check-in with other WDFW or ODFW staff. Is there anything else to add to the staff report on the main session?
Chris Kern's hand is up.
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, thanks. I thought I saw Jeremy there for a second, so if he has something, I'd be happy to wait.
Yours was first.
Okay. I just wanted to back up real quick to something earlier that because it came up late last year, late enough that it caused a bunch of confusion, as I recall, and I don't know if the folks that are on the call today recall that, or if this is helpful or not, but I'm going to do it anyway just in case. And it's related to the abundance index calculation process and how it plays in for the fisheries in Alaska, Canada, and how that plays into our PFMC process. And the reason I bring it up is because last year, I think once we got that information, it pushed the impacts on, I think, Thule LRH up a bit from the March meeting as BC information came in, and that got turned into a kind of a pretty misunderstood process from some folks who were tracking it, kind of not in detail, but seeing what was going on in the fisheries, and it was perceived as Canada increased their fishing or threw some new option on the table late in the game or something like that. And that's just not how that works. And so I thought I'd just take a minute to talk about that real briefly. That those fisheries and the Alaska fishery really is being done with a different approach at the moment. So I don't think that one's anything's going to change for the Alaska fishery. So if I just focus on the BC, northern BC and West Coast Vancouver Island fisheries, those are driven by this abundance index calculation and total allowable catch under the Pacific Salmon Treaty. And those abundance indexes are calculated every year, but they're just being finalized now. And so Ryan, I think, or John, I think mentioned that those are expected to come in between now and the next PFMC meeting. They will structure their fisheries after that abundance index is done, not before. And so there is no Canada jumping in and taking a new swipe at fisheries, so to speak, or anything like that. It is simply following the treaty itself as that index comes in, and it's just not available to us at the first PFMC meeting. So typically what happens, I think, is the salmon technical team incorporate sort of the best expectation based on recent years as a placeholder, and then we're forced to update that to make sure we've accounted for everything at the second meeting, and that can result in changes, either up or down. So I just wanted to get that out there. It's not the case that there's some secondary negotiation going on with Canada or Alaska that says we're negotiating away or up or down on any specific impact or anything. It is simply following the treaty, and it's all about the timing of when that information comes out. So given that it kind of dusted up late in the game last year, and we didn't really get a chance to address it because it happened after north of Falcon, and I think it was last year, it might have been the year before. I just thought I'd take a minute to go through that for folks, and hopefully that's not more confusing than helpful, because that wasn't my intent. But anyway, that's enough. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, Chris. Jeremy.
Actually, thank you, Chris. This segues exactly the same topic that I wanted to let folks know that, underneath the new PSC agreement that's currently in place. The deadline is April 1st to have the necessary information from the PSC and our northern counterparts to incorporate the information that Chris was just talking through. And so the timeline there is we'll have this meeting today, but we are currently we have received the information. We're working through the process so that we can incorporate that into the models in order to start the April meeting. And so I think what Chris lined out was as well what I recall from whether it was last year or the year before. There will be modifications to the likely impact of the Thule stock based on that information we received, and we just don't have at this point in hand the ramifications from that, but we will have it once we start the PFMC meeting here this month. So thanks for that, Chris, and I just wanted to let folks know that was the date by which every year now we will receive that information. So
thank you, Jeremy. Appreciate that. That helps. Before we move on to the next agenda item, I wanted to do a check in on any other staff updates. All right, hearing none. Gonna do a check with Stuart or Kate with CritFic. Believe there was a request for provide a co-manager report. Is that correct?
Yes, Ryan, this is Stuart Ellis with the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission, and we have Wilbur Slockish from the Yakima Nation on, and he has a statement he'd like to read on behalf of the Columbia River tribes.
All right, thanks, Stuart. And *6 to unmute if you aren't already unmute.
Okay. Yeah, good morning, everyone. My name is Wilbur Slockish Jr. I am a member of the Yakima Nation, a commissioner with the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission. I have lived and fished along this Columbia River tributaries for my entire life. I have been asked to provide comments today on behalf of the 4 Columbia River Treaty Tribes, the Yakima, Umatilla, Warm Springs, and Nez Perce tribes. We normally try to minimize our comments regarding the precise structuring of non-treaty fisheries, but we do feel the need to provide comments when we have concerns about impacts to upriver stocks and upriver fisheries. In past years, we have indicated our opposition to summer season mark selective fisheries and our opposition to mainstem fall season mark selective fisheries as well as mark selective fisheries, Coho fisheries. This year, we understand there is a proposal for a mark selective fishery in August at Buoy 10. This is an unwise proposal for several reasons. First, estuary areas are a poor choice as an area for mark selective fisheries. The fish are making complex changes to adapt from salt to freshwater, and there is evidence that release mortality may increase in estuary areas. There can be a sharp temperature differential between the ocean and river temperatures that can be 70 degrees or more in August, which likely puts fish at risk to higher release mortality. Second, we have lower than average upriver fall Chinook forecast. The spring creek hatchery Thule forecast is only about 2/3 of the 10-year average run size. The run has returned lower than forecast in several recent years, sometimes by a significant amount. A marked selective fishery at buoy 10 will increase impacts to the Spring Creek run compared to a full retention fishery because of the fact that these fish are almost all ad clipped. If this run comes in less than forecast and we have difficulty meeting broodstock needs, it can cause problems for managing a treaty fishery. We don't want to face this risk because of non-treaty fishery decisions. The privilege to engage in recreational fishing should not become before the treaty rights for our tribes. Third, it is likely the ocean fishery right next to buoy 10 fishery will have regulation allowing the retention of unclipped Chinook. This could cause enforcement concerns with different retention rules in adjacent areas and the fact that ocean fishers will be transiting through the buoy 10 fishery. It is possible people may try to fish in both areas as well. We would not like to see an incentive put in place for buoy 10 fishers to keep an unclipped fish and claim it was caught in the ocean. Fourth, a marked selective fishery won't do anything to reduce impacts to ESA listed stocks in non-treaty fisheries. The only thing it will do is shift impacts from landed catch to release mortality. It will increase wild impacts in upstream fisheries, including both the main stem treaty fisheries and tributary treaty and non-treaty fisheries because of changing mark rates from the selective fisheries. It appears that the main justification for this proposal is simply to extend the fishery through Labor Day. Just as in most recent years, this run may just not be large enough for the buoy 10 fisheries to go through Labor Day. If this is such an important goal, then it seems like it would be more practical to simply start the buoy 10 fisheries later so that it can go through the desired date and let people keep and eat the fish they catch. Fish were provided by the creators as a source of food for people willing to care for the salmon. We are not showing we care for these fish by injuring them, hooking them, injuring them, and tossing back. This concludes our statement.
Thank you, Wilbur. Appreciate that thoughtful report. Just want to check in with Tucker and Charlene and Chris. Anything that you want to follow up with Wilbur on?
This is Charlene. I didn't have anything further other than to say thanks to Wilbur for his testimony here today. Appreciate it.
Yeah, this is Chris. Same. I don't have anything. Appreciate it, Wilbur. Good to hear from you. Really looking forward to the time where we can actually shake hands again. Same for Stuart and the rest of the folks that are on. I will say one point that I just want to make is we do have a closed area at the mouth of the Columbia between buoy 10 and the main ocean fishery that is closed to salmon fishing in general. I can't remember how broad it is, but it's fairly large. That is at least partially intended to prevent regulatory concerns like some of what you raised, or at least minimize them. So just thought I'd point that out, but otherwise, no, thank you. Appreciate it.
And no additional comments from me other than, yeah, always good to hear from you, Wilbur. Very much respect your wisdom, thoughts, and inputs. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you again, Wilbur. And Stuart, are there any other reports or updates or thoughts you want to provide under this agenda item?
No, not at this time. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no problem. All right. So moving on, just kind of reorienting myself to the agenda. We are to the point and stage under the main session to take public questions or comments. So just a reminder what we're, if you have fishery specific questions or comments, we can, it may be wise to reserve those for the breakout sessions. But by all means, you can provide them here too. We're just trying to strategize the best use of everyone's time. So with that, remember the ground rules. So let me just scroll them. I'm going to walk through them really quickly again. Stick to the agenda at hand or a topic at hand, one person at a time. To put yourself on a list, virtually raise your hand. Use *6 to mute or unmute if you're on a phone. And be professional, be tough on issues, not on people. Be in the listening mode, speak and act professionally, allow for a balance of speaking time. Again, chat functions will not be used for comments or questions except for technical difficulties. And one more time, I'll say remain on mute if you're not speaking. So with this, we're going to kind of walk through and see any questions or comments folks have, and we may not address them, but we'll do our best. And so with that, you can raise your hand virtually if you know how to do so. Mertice, just want to do a check. Anything else you want to add on the technical side for teams?
No, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll open it up, and I'll take names first, and then we hit a pause on names. We'll get started, and then we'll hopefully move on to the breakout sessions thereafter.
David Moskowitz's hand is up.
Okay.
I don't see anyone else. Oh, we got Greg Johnson as well on the computers.
Robert Moxley.
Robert. So I've got David, Greg, and Robert.
Otis Hunsinger.
Otis.
And Randy Woolsey.
Randy. Okay.
Susie Beer.
Susie.
Gary Sibley.
One more time, sorry about that.
This is Gary Sibley. I'm on for comments.
Okay, have you on the list?
Jody Mather.
Jody, I have you on the list.
Liz has her hand up.
Liz, I have you on the list.
Bob Reese and Bill
Fowler.
Bob Reese, and who was that?
Jim Fowler.
Jim Fowler.
And Bill Monroe's hand was up as well. Junior.
Yep. Bill Monroe Jr. All right, I'm going to walk through the names and try to get names and see if there's anyone I missed. David Moxley, Greg Johnson, Robert, Otis, Randy, Susie, I think it was Gary Sibley, Jody, Liz, Bob Reese, Bill Monroe Jr., Jim Fowler. Did I miss anyone?
Travis Moncrief.
Try again, please.
Brian Liebert.
Brian Liebert. Okay. Brian, I have you on the list. Who was the other individual?
Travis Moncrief.
I heard Travis. Is that right?
Correct.
Okay.
Bill Hunsinger.
Bill Hunsinger.
Pat O'Grady.
Pat O'Grady. All right, we'll get started and we'll see where that gets us. If you are an advisor, be beneficial for everyone for you to announce your role as what advisory group, just so the public can understand. But we'll go ahead and get started. Remember, I'm going to put the ground rules up for those following along, but just be cognizant of speaking time, and everyone else should be on mute. And David, you're up first.
Hi, can you hear me, Ryan?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. David Moskowitz with Conservation Angler. I just had a couple questions that I was hoping that maybe we can get answers to in the breakout, and so I'll just I'll list them, and that's all I have. I didn't have overall comments, but just questions. I couldn't find materials on the packet, but to understand what the steelhead fishing pressure would be in the Columbia between basically April 1st and July 1st, it looks like we're going to be heading towards conservative rules from July on, but I wondered what the bag limits fishing regs are currently, and if that could be discussed in the breakout, that would be helpful. Also, hoping to find out what the forecasts are for wild coho returning to the lower Columbia River in 2021. And I was just scrambling through all the material. I could not find a sort of an estimate of what the wild component is going to be on that coho return. And then it would be interesting to know what the agencies use in determining sort of the encounter rate and mortality rates for both the non-treaty commercial fishery, the recreational fishery on steelhead, and then particularly wondering what the agencies use for a catch and release mortality, either by species or by area. And I guess I'm asking this in response to the concerns that Mr. Schlockus raised just a little bit ago. And it'd be helpful to know what kind of mortality rate for release is used by the agencies when we get into the breakout. And I really appreciate being able to ask some questions in advance, and look forward to the next session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, David. Greg, you're up.
Hi, Greg Johnson, Commercial Advisor. My question is relative to page 5 on the Coho ER rate 11.08. I just wondered if that is inclusive or exclusive of any tributary fishery mortalities. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Greg. Robert, you're up.
All right, thank you. Robert Moxley, Columbia River Advisor. Really appreciate Wilbur's comments. Very pragmatic. I hope that staff takes them seriously. Some of these mark select fisheries, I believe, and especially warm waters, are more damage than savings. I'd ask staff a question that for the breakout session in regards to the release mortality with these fish in the fall. Have we ever done a study? Have we ever done a study to determine what the true release mortality is, and why is it the same for Chinook and Coho? I mean, I would encourage staff to consider a non-select opportunity on Coho. We're looking at a high tier for Coho impacts, maybe a 1 per year if it's mortally wounded, something like that. Also appreciate the opportunity to fish Tongue Point in this fishery. We closed it for a reason, and I believe that reason was we were fishing on 8 1/4 exploitation. I believe the exploitation is 15%, as that fishery is mostly an upriver bright fishery. So glad to see it in the models, and hope to encourage staff to keep that. Thank you.
Thank you, Robert. Otis, you're next. Otis, you're next on the list. You come off mute, *6 if you're on the phone. All right, we'll come back to you, Otis. Randy, you're up.
Yeah, you can hear me now. Sorry.
Oh, yes, go ahead then.
Okay, Otis Hunsinger, Commercial Advisory Group. I have a couple questions. I was wondering if the state of Oregon and the state of Washington have anything set to try and agree to some kind of concurrency This has been going on for quite some time, and it makes everything difficult for your staff and everything else. It'd be nice if we could agree or get at least a meeting to try and attempt to agree with Oregon and Washington on some concurrency, also some gear concurrency as well. And that's all I got. I'd just like to see that allocation concurrent in the state of Oregon and Washington, but also you guys give us our impacts, but then you take research impacts out of our quota as well. So when you say you're giving us X percent, it's really less than that when you take research and alternative gear allocation of that as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Otis. Randy, go ahead.
Thanks, Ryan. Randy Woolsey, Recreational Advisor, member Northwest Sport Fishing Industry Association. So I have, basically, I think I have two different questions for staff. My main concern, the main concern of the recreational industry is having a fully executed coho season after the Chinook season this fall. And I'm wondering, we fish on forecasts. So, a scenario might be that the Chinook run comes in stronger even than forecast. The fishing will be really good and we'll use up our LRHs potentially too quickly. So what would staff have in place to slow down the fishery? Kind of thinking that the worst case scenario is, sending people home before that coho fishery starts. We want to start building the recreational fishery at the highest level possible. So what would be in place to slow down that Chinook fishery, given that we've modeled the full 15% of our impacts already? And also, secondly, one of the management objectives is to have the entire river, all the way up the Columbia open. One of the parts of the river that has the most recreational angling days on it is the middle part of the river, from Tongue Point to the Lewis. Lots of river access, lots of bank access, really an important part of the river, and has always kind of bore the biggest part of adaptive management and the shortest fishing time. So I'm wondering, what I'd asked for in a model is what number of days would be available to that middle part of the river if Tongue Point to Puget Island was adaptively slowed down. To me, it's not an LRH issue, but a fairness issue to that middle part of the river. And I'd like to see a model showing, rather than just 2 days of non-mark selective fishery, if that fishing at Tongue Point was reduced, what would that do to the middle part of the river? So anyway, those are my two questions, and I appreciate the opportunity to pose them to staff. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Susie, you're next. Susie, if you're on mute, you need to come off. If you're on the phone, it's *6. One more check, Susie. Are you able to provide your questions or comments? All right, we'll move on. We'll circle back, and also hopefully you'll stay on for the rec breakout too. So may have written it down wrong, but Gary Sibley.
Good morning.
Good morning. Go ahead.
Good morning. This is Gary Sibley.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity. I'm retired military, retired in the Astoria area 30 years ago, just for the specific opportunity to fish the wonderful Columbia River we have. And I just wanted to give my opinion that I agree with the staff's recommendations, and I strongly encourage that we keep Tongue Point open for further opportunities for families and guests that come into this area for that opportunity to fish Chinook and Coho. And again, thank you for the opportunity, and I hope you guys follow our recommendations.
Thank you for that.
That's all. Yep.
Thank you. Jody, you're up next. Jody, you might be on mute. *6 to unmute if you're on the phone. Okay, last call, Jody, then we'll move on. Are you able to provide your comment? Okay, we'll circle back later. Liz, are you able to provide your comment?
Can you hear me, Ryan?
Yes, I can. Go ahead.
All right, thank you very much. A couple of things. First of all, I'm interested, and this could be done off channel, in knowing how the Chinook impacts are attributed to the Coho fishery. Again, as Randy said, that's the #1 priority this year, is to make sure the glorious bounty of the predictions of Coho this year can translate into some pretty wonderful fisheries. Want to make sure there's a Chinook. I know you've done it. I'm just interested in knowing that that it's being protected. I believe I heard during the presentation that the models are right at 15% for the upriver bright exploitation rate, and that is going to provide for some pretty exciting Chinook fishery as well. Many of us have fished in that Tongue Point to Warrior Rock. It's not a fishery, or Tongue Point to Puget. It's not a fishery for everybody. You really do have to have the equipment and the knowledge to deal with the weather when it kicks up there. The true family fishery here is the spot that Randy mentioned, where most of the angler trips are in the Middle River. So when we have an area of the river that's open, that can be pretty explosive, can be pretty exciting, great fishing, and we're modeling right at 15%. I guess there's some concern about the effects on the upriver bright share for the upper river. So we're sort of back to, how do you adaptively balance the bounty that this year's going to present, so that a section of the river that has pretty much had a short sheet the whole time can have a little more share of that bounty. So I'm just sort of echoing some of the things that Randy had to say. The other question I would have is, the bee run's looking pretty bleak this year again. You've rightly projected the sport fishery below Bonneville is closed, and I think there's probably some restrictions above there as well. And I'm just interested in hearing how the commercial fleet will be adapted for these dire conditions for bee run as well. So again, thank you. This is exciting. These are fun things to talk about, but we would encourage folks to think about how we balance this amazing year, especially for the section of the river that's would love to see some rebalancing in these kind of runs.
Thank you, Liz. Appreciate that. Bob Reese, you're up.
Hi, Bob Reese, representing Northwest Guides and Anglers Association, also on the Columbia River Recreational Advisory Committee. I'll probably save most of my comments for the breakout session, but just want to echo some of what I heard, in particular about protecting the coho opportunity. And I think staff has done a great job of providing a model that that does do that. So obviously the need for in-season management may happen depending on lower river hatchery catch rates. So like I say, I'll save most of my comments for the breakout session. Thanks for your work, you guys.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Bill Monroe Jr.
Hello, Ryan and staff. Can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can.
Nice. Well, good morning. Want to echo a lot of the main statements of here is like you guys yet again are working really hard to get this done, and I'm sure you're actually behind in most of it, but you still find ways to pull this through. It's exemplary and appreciated. I'm going to do the same thing as Mr. Reese. I'm going to save most of my comments for the breakout session. I just wanted to say that the base model, moving it down for a mark select fishery to the 10th looks really good. The opportunity for tongue point looks really good. The opportunity for the middle and upper lower rivers sections look pretty good. Randy brought up a good point. Mr. Woolsey says that we need to kind of do what it takes to get that coho season into to high gear. This might be the year to do it, operating at a really high threshold. Even if half of these bad boys come in, it's going to be pretty outstanding. I just want to say thanks again and hope to talk further in the breakout room. Thanks, guys, everybody, all staff.
Appreciate that.
Ryan?
Jim? Yes.
There's people that wanted to testify that had their name in there that are, for whatever reason, cannot get off mute regardless of *6.
Okay, I've got a few folks flagged. We'll circle back on who we didn't get, but we'll keep moving forward first. I have Jim Fowler, who's next.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm Jim Fowler. I'm a guide from Astoria, and everything sounds pretty good. I agree with trying to access the coho. My only concern is I think we played that game in 2018, and the coho run didn't materialize, and the lower river fishery kind of took a hit where we didn't get to fish kind of as much as say the upriver guys, and I don't, we've discussed it in the past. We can't play catch up down here. Once the fish are through, they're through. So just kind of being aware and cognizant of that. And, I don't want to hurt the above tongue point fishery either. I'm actually sitting on a boat looking at other boats trying to catch springers right now above tongue point. And, I know it's not for everyone, but the guys that fish this area really like it. So I'm probably gonna have to jump off before the breakout because I'm gonna lose battery in my phone as my license. But thanks, and hopefully we all have a good year.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. Might mispronounce it. Up next, we have Brian Lurch. Lurch.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
So I'm also a guide down in Astoria like Jody and Jim Fowler, and I agree that, we'd like the opportunity above tongue point, and we do also want to be protective of those coho, so that way we can fish those and maximize the opportunity.
Thank you very much. Travis, you're next. Travis, you're up next. If you're on the phone, it's *6 to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Hey, yeah, Travis Moncrief here from Tillamook. Fish up in that area as well. Just kind of want to echo a couple others what they've said, along with Robert, in support of keeping the tongue point fishery. So everybody's kind of covered my thoughts on that. I agreed with that, and that's just want to make my statement. Thank you.
Appreciate that. Thank you. Bill Hunsinger.
How about now?
Yes, we have you now.
You pick me up now, Ryan?
Yes, Bill, you can go ahead.
All right, Bill Hunsinger, commercial advisor. The one thing I get by looking at this paperwork is obviously you guys understand it, because in early Coho allocation percentage, I don't see how we're going to get, the commercials are going to get their percentage of the early run. And you want to give us the late run, which is, almost double of the early run. So how we're, and I'll have this for the breakout session already. I'm going to bring it up. But the thing is that there's no way that we're going to be able to catch those early fish the way you're looking at proposing a way for us to catch them. And the last thing is the tool that you're giving us to catch is worthless. And you know it. If you look at the numbers from the previous year of the 3 3/4 inch straight net, you catch mostly jacks. You don't catch adult fish. So there's no way that we're going to be able to catch our percent of the allocations with what you guys are proposing. So I'll hold this for the breakout part. Ryan, you're doing a good job with the meeting. I appreciate your time, but we want every fish that we're allowed to catch, no matter what it is. And that's going to be our stance from now on. So anyway, looking forward to the breakout section. And Ryan, thank you once again.
Thank you, Bill. It's definitely a team effort. It's not just me. I promise you that. Pat O'Grady, you're up next. Pat, you can go ahead.
You got me on there, Ryan?
I have you now. Go ahead.
All right. Hey, thanks a lot for everybody's hard effort there. First concern there is keep that tongue point system open for us down here. A lot of people utilize that. And secondary is the fall fishery here. With the Coho and the Chinook there, the mortality rate is very high with the warm water. Can you put a program in where the first fish you catch, you keep? And that's my comments. Thank you very much for everybody's hard work.
Thank you, Pat. Appreciate your comments. So I'm going to circle back up the list who I had on my list. So Susie, if you can come off mute, you're up next. And *6 if you've dialed in. Susie, can you come off mute? All right, we'll have to move forward. Hopefully we can get her on the rec breakout. Jody, can you come off mute and provide your comments? Jody, one more time. Can you come off mute? If you've dialed in, *6 is the option to come off mute. And just, obviously make sure your phone is off mute too. All right, I'm going to do a call to see if anyone else provided their name that I didn't mention to provide comment, and we will have more commenting in the breakout session. So if you haven't, you still have that opportunity, but just seeing if I missed anyone.
I do see Jen Coleman and Kelly Bartok. I apologize. They have their hands up.
Okay, thank you for that. So besides those two, last call before we close it for comments. All right, Jim. Oh, who is that? Was there someone
Ryan,
there?
this is Kelly Short. Ryan,
Kelly.
this is Kelly Short. Can you hear me?
Yes, Kelly.
This is Kelly Short, fishing guide and Columbia River Advisory. I just wanted to thank staff and all you guys for the hard work that you did. You got a sturgeon season set for us, which I know was hard for you, and now working on our Columbia River system. I like a couple of the options that you have submitted out there. I'm going to hold some of my other comments to the breakout session, but I really wanted to thank you guys for looking at all the options and ways to ensure we split this fishery up and give everybody a shot at them. I kind of agree with Fowler and some of them. I mean, that Coho season that one year, we got shorted down on the lower river, and once those fish are by, then we're kind of done. And I'd like to make sure that we get a full Chinook season down there, and you know, if the Cohos come in, it's great, and it'll be a fantastic season for everybody all the way up the ribbon. But I'll keep some of my other comments to the breakout session, but I just wanted to let you know I was on board today, and thank you for my comment and the staff.
Thank you, Kelly. Last for commenting, we have Jim Coleman.
Thanks,
That was
Ryan.
the other Kelly.
You got me there, Ryan? You got?
Yeah, Jim, 1 second. Let me see who that was. Who was that else that spoke up?
That was the other Kelly who has their hand up.
All right, this is the Kelly. Yeah,
Okay,
different Kelly, but I'll wait. Go ahead, Jim.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you. Jim, go first, then we'll follow up with Kelly, and then that's it.
All right. Thank you very much. I just like, my name is Jim Coleman. I'm a commercial advisor, and I'm always amazed at the work that goes into getting to where we are today. And I know everybody's been working 7 days a week to get us here. So thanks to everybody that's worked on that. I just have a comment about the projected 1.5 million coho that we hope to get. I just would like to say that when these coho hit the river, they shoot up this river at a very high rate. At every tide is a new group of fish coming in, and it's really going to behoove us that both states work together and use adaptive management to get the bulk of these fish caught. The last thing we want is to get a whole bunch of coho on the gravel and people saying, well, why are we producing all these fish if they're just getting ruining our PHOS numbers? So I just want everybody to understand, if this thing works out, there's going to be I hope, some adaptive management going on. And if there's some steelhead to be given up by a user group to help get these fish caught, it would really behoove us all to work together to make this happen this year, because if we get those numbers, it's going to be a great fishery for all of us, but we need to get them caught. So thank you.
Thank you, Jim. Appreciate that. And Kelly, you're last. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you very much. My name is Kelly Balkan-Bartok. I'm the communications director for the Pacific Whale Watch Association up here in the San Juans and Salish Sea. And I want to thank you and all your staff for all of your work on the protections and balancing of salmon and fisheries, and of course the southern resident killer whales that rely heavily upon these fish as well. So it's very much appreciated that that all the work you do. And southern resident killer whales really are dependent upon Sacramento River, Columbia River, Skagit River, and all the way up. So this is very appreciated that there is a more and more recognition of the southern residents. And I would just like to end with a Billy Frank quote that really touches us up here: is, if a salmon gets away from you, she's going upriver. She's producing more salmon for you and all of us. That salmon, she's coming home. And there is no wasted salmon. The more we protect, the more we all thrive. And I wanted to thank you for your time and all your efforts.
Thank you, Kelly. Appreciate that. All right. Public comment in the main session is closed. I wanted to do a check-in with staff. Anything we heard we want to address. I think most of what we heard we can save for the breakout sessions, but just going to check in with staff. I might have something I jump in on, but going to open the door up to staff first to respond to anything they heard they want to address now.
Sorry, Ryan, it's John. I'm just trying to look through the questions. Most of them seem better covered in the breakout so far, but I'm still looking.
All right. I did hear one question regarding the states getting concurrent. Is there action going on? Actually, yesterday, the two states commissions did get together. I think that information's probably posted on our each state's commission website. So those discussions are underway, and they do have an intention to meet through, moving down the road through the year. So I guess I can speak to that and just mention that piece. Otherwise, I think, again, John, you're right. Most everything's better for the breakouts, but just going to see if you have anything else you want to fill the blanks on or respond to.
Ryan, this is Cindy.
Go ahead.
There was a question about the wild coho forecast, and I looked that up. It is about 50,000 ocean abundance, and that includes non-listed wild fish, and the ESA listed component is about 39,000. Again, ocean abundance.
Okay, thank you. I did hear one question about, I don't know if I wrote it down, but I heard the question if tributary fisheries are part of the what you see in the Coho table, and they are not. Just Cindy, is that correct?
Yes, that's my understanding, Ryan.
Okay. All right. John, Charlene, Chris, Tucker, Cindy, anything else to respond to or move forward, take our break and have a breakout session?
Hey Ryan, this is Charlene. Nothing further from me. Looking forward to the breakouts and just want to thank everybody for their comments today, and kudos to the staff as well.
Thank you, Charlene. All right. And I know that we had two individuals that weren't able to provide their testimony, and I believe they'll probably be in the rec breakout. So we'll move those two names to the top of the list just to see if we can capture their thoughts. Otherwise, I'm going to scroll back up to the agenda. We're going to take a 10-minute break to allow everyone to kind of get some fresh air, stretch their legs. If they're fishing, keep fishing. If they're on the boat somewhere. That being said, it'll take a little bit of time for staff to kind of get together. So we'll meet back up in 10 minutes. So the rec folks, the rec breakout, stay on this line. You don't have to sign off. You can stay on. Just make sure you're on mute, or you can sign back in. Commercial, you'll switch over to the other line provided in the agenda. So 10 minutes, so it's 11:25. So we'll start back up at 11:35. 11:35, the breakouts will get going again. So everyone, thank you for your patience and calling on for the main session. So we'll catch you on each breakout session with staff. So thank you again.
So because
All right. Good morning again, everyone. I'm just looking at my attendance list to make sure we have staff. So just 1 second while I do that. All right, I think we got everyone. Just I know I see on the line. I just want to make sure we have. Let me know if anyone's missing on the Oregon side. But I believe I see Tucker, Chris, and Jeff, as well as Howard. And then Washington side, we have Wendy, Quentin, Ortiz, Matt, Bryce, Josh, Tim, and Kyle. So I think we're good. Tucker, Jeff, Chris, you good on your end, do you think?
I think we probably are.
All right.
Yep.
Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and get started again. Everything is essentially the same format, ground rules, all that as before. So hopefully we don't have to go through that again. But it's going to be just like before, where we're going to go through kind of a staff walkthrough presentation, just kind of a quick run through the handouts. I'm betting most of you have already looked at it since we got it to you this morning or last night. But we'll just kind of walk through and orient you to it through the main stem part, and then we'll pass off the mic to WDFW regional staff to provide a walk through their tributary handout. And then we'll get into comments, questions, and our intention is to be done on schedule by 1 o'clock, no later than. And if we're done earlier, even better. And I guess just another reminder of what our goal is here. It is to, hopefully we can get buy-in on what staff pulled together based on all the input we received from the previous meeting, which is what John walked through earlier. We'll go through more details on it, answer some of the questions we heard. So we'll try to get back to some of the questions we heard before we open. And then once we do all that, we'll open it to public questions and comments. And ultimate goal is to walk into PFMC2 with understanding what everyone's priorities are, understanding we have policy objectives to meet, conservation objectives to meet, and provide meaningful fisheries. And things may adjust accordingly at PFMC2. So with that, just want to do a check-in with staff. Anything else before we walk through the handout? All right, hearing none. Mertice, let me do a check with you. Anything else you want to remind or announce regarding, technical questions that you've had to deal with or anything else?
No, the only thing I will say is that if folks are unmuted, I have been muting them. So just a heads up on that, where especially for people on the phone, you might need to hit *6, even though you don't think you have to. I think it tells you when you're muted, but just a heads up that if we get extraneous noise, I will be muting you, unless you're actually supposed to be talking.
All right, thank you, Mertice. So moving on, I will walk through the handout. Then I'll check in with staff, see if there's anything else they want to add regarding what I presented. Trying to think of, let me think about it for a second. If we're going to address some of the things we heard, I think some of the things we'll go through will address some of the questions we heard earlier. We may try to fill in the blanks a little bit, but we'll get through the staff presentation, then we'll kind of see if there's some thoughts or comments from additional folks. And again, I will put Susie and Jody first on the list because they weren't able to come off mute, or they just couldn't provide their thoughts. So with that, I'm going to move on forward. So starting on the bottom of page 5 of the handout, where this is the main stem section, for summer Chinook, kind of reference it's a larger forecast, provides some fishing opportunities based on the current allocation. We are looking at enough fish to provide a fishery with a standard kind of approach to fish, mark selective, June 16th through about July 5th, and then above Bonneville to Highway 395. June 16th start, 2 fish mark selective, and run through July. So I guess with that, the only thing to keep in mind is as ocean fishery changes, that does influence what we're working with on river mouth returns. And so anyways, on that, so my plan is to we're going to walk through all this handout first before we take public comments, questions, but I see Liz has a question. So if it's a technical question, we can do it, but just checking in, Liz.
It is. Thank you. I will try to follow your process, Ryan. I do listen to you. I'm just curious if one fish, it can extend that fishery, or is it that so few of us catch 2 that it doesn't really matter?
Got it. Thanks, Liz. I guess I should have been a little more clear. My technical question was more of technical questions on teams or the call, but I do have your question written down, but we'll try to, if we can reserve those for the end, that'd be better. But appreciate it, Liz. So I'm just going to jot it down. So we'll circle back. Well, I'll address it. We'll address it a little bit later as we get through it all and collect everyone else's thoughts too on the fisheries. So for sockeye, we have the 1% non-treaty rate. We had really high harvest rates last year, so we're looking to scale back the fisheries. Plus, we have a little smaller run size to work with. So we're going to align. Thoughts are to align that with the summer Chinook fishery start, but only a 1 fish limit as part of the adult salmonid. And then moving on to fall Chinook, bottom of page 5. This is John kind of walked through some of this, but just going to walk through a little bit more. So the model assumes just your standard 2 fish limit and a 1 Chinook non-mark selective unless otherwise stated. So that's kind of the standard approach. And then also, just to be extra clear, Coho retention fisheries will remain open post Chinook retention fisheries. So we do have impacts model that we believe should be sufficient there. Buoy 10 does utilize some mark selective fishing to achieve the Oregon Chinook objective. For tongue, so still on the bottom, page 5, tongue point to Warrior Rock, we're utilizing adaptive management to achieve the impact neutral to convert the mark selective days that 1 week that was described in the Oregon rule to convert to non-mark selective days. This reduces the Chinook retention days during September 8th to 14th by 5 mark selective days. Also noted in the past, anglers have complained about this mark selective fishery that's had has actually seen an average 40% mark rate. So we're on top of page 6. Tongue Point to West Puget Island. We've heard that come up at the previous meeting about reducing or closing the fishery. However, that does not meet the Oregon objective and does add complexity to the regulations. Also, modifying this section does not provide any meaningful tule savings, as we are focused in on the, it is a tule constraint year. For the area above Bonneville Dam, there is not an Oregon objective. So we've got a regarding Chinook retention season. So this, and in the past, this fishery is managed in season. Under the LRH, and those are the tules, modifications at PFMC2 may actually necessitate in-river reductions, possibly, worst case scenario. Can't predict everything that's going to happen. There's a little bit of the northern fishery changes that could have some influence, plus there's modifications in the ocean, so we will find out. And I should also make mention the majority of our in-river harvest on LRH tules in the recreational fishery occurs in buoy 10. Other fisheries have relatively few LRH impacts, including the area from Tongue Point to the western point of Puget Island. So here, right in the middle of page 6, we have a table. This is essentially what was in the model John walked through earlier. So this is our base suite of fisheries for the river. So I'll just kind of orient you to it. So you've got the river sections on the first column, and then the second column, Chinook retention dates, whether it's mark selective or non-mark. So if you see the N before MSF, that's non-mark. And then it shows the Coho retention season, Steelhead retention, and then just your daily bag, followed by your Snook kept, and then your Chinook release morts, and then your tule exploitation rate, your upriver bright harvest rate, and sharing of upriver bright. So I guess the take home here is, first of all, Coho is open to retention August 1st through December 31st. So wide open there. There is a difference in bag limits by the area, but that's a standard approach. Steelhead is closed August through October from the mouth of the Bonneville. And we do have a table on the Steelhead on the next page, I believe, or the page after that, that provides more specifics, but help protect bee impacts. So for buoy 10, the model had a mark selective Chinook retention season August 1st through the 10th. So that's a reduction from the previous meeting, I believe, was August 13th, so a few days less, so more non-mark selective days. So that runs through Labor Day, November 6th, has a 2 fish limit, 1 Chinook, when open to Chinook, and then starting September 7th, so the day after Labor Day, increases the basically Coho limit up to 3 hatchery fish. Tongue Point to Warrior, converted, so it's all non-mark selective in this model, runs August 1st through September 9th. So converted that 1 week I referenced earlier to non-mark, so it loss of total days of mark selective, but does translate into a couple days past Labor Day for any Chinook. And then Warrior Rock to Bonneville is August 1st through the end of October, all non-mark selective. And then above Bonneville is August 1st through the end of the year for Chinook, since there's no objective there to worry about. And so I guess Chinook kept is provided. So you have about 24,000, a little under 24,000 in buoy 10, 9,500 Tongue Point to Warrior, 19,000 Warrior to Bonneville, and then about 8,000 above Bonneville. And then we have our LRH impact. So 5.7% in buoy 10, 0.75% in tongue point to Warrior, and a little less than that, 0.71 in Warrior to Bonneville. And so that's our constraint. And then we've got the upriver bright also included. Ranges from 2 to 3% for the lower river fisheries and less than 1% above Bonneville. So moving on to Coho, there was kind of a request to provide more specifics here. Kind of just already walked through it in the table above. Again, this is on bottom of page 6, but all fisheries below Hood River are marked selective for buoy 10, 2 fish through September 6th, and then switch to 3 on September 7th. And all the other areas remain at 2 fish. And then we are not considering any non-marked selective fisheries during the preseason planning process. And there's no consideration for a change in season to buoy 10 for marked selective. And I should also make mention that also in-season consideration of an increased daily bag limit will be based on us understanding the ocean and buoy 10 coho catches to help assess the run strength of coho. Basically doesn't materialize from the forecast. And other in-season information such as catch and impacts and handle of non-target stocks prior to increasing coho bag limit earlier than scheduled. And then move on to page 7 under Steelhead. So this is kind of a matrix of what's open, what's closed, and what the bag limit is for Steelhead. Kind of in the shaded green, if you are able to look at it, that is your A and B index accounting. So you know where those where the impacts are occurring. But these fisheries here largely align with the last 2 to 3 years, 4 years of rolling block closures to protect wild bee impacts, as well as last year there was additional movement to help protect impacts to A's given lower run size we're working with. So basically when we're open, it's a 1 fish limit and closed during the peak timing of when bees are around and or overwintering. And of course, this will be monitored in season catches and also run size updates as we move forward in time. And it also includes some tributary regulations included in there on both on the Oregon and Washington side. Again, these largely align with what's occurred in the last few years. And additionally, there are barbless hooks are required for 2021. So Tucker, I just wanted to check in with you real quick, see which approach you prefer. Do you want to answer some of the questions we heard and get any other staff filling in, or go through the tributary handout? What makes more sense to you?
Ryan, maybe we should deal with the main stem comments first and then move into the tributary.
Okay, thanks. Yep. So we'll address few of the things staff wanted to circle back on, and then we'll go to the other handout. So staff, if you have some of the questions that you heard earlier you want to address, jump on. But I'm just looking at my list now. So bear with us, folks.
Ryan, this is Tim. I can address one question about the the coho exploitation rate as to whether or not it includes the trib morts, and that is the answer is no.
Okay. Thank you, Tim. I think we heard one question on, sorry, I'm trying to get to it real quick. Release mortality rate study. So I'm pulling that up. I'm just gonna kind of reference it real quick. So 1 second. Oops, sorry, I have to move that off my screen. Okay. So the question of has there been or what study we're using regarding in river. What I can say to that, if I heard it correctly, that I may have not, but the Chinook and Coho release rates, which are tax supported, is 21% for barbed hooks in river in the fall and 19% for barbless. The source of this is the Pacific Fishery Management Council Salmon Technical Team 2000 report, which, getting more into specifics, includes a 14% actual release mortality rate plus 5% for drop off. And then, as you may have noticed, the 2% difference for barbed or barbless hooks. So, staff, anything else to fill in the blanks before we jump on to the tributary handout?
Hey, Ryan, it's Quentin. You got me?
Yes, go ahead.
So I heard quite a bit of testimony pertaining to the preserving the Coho fishery, obviously, especially at Buoy 10, but throughout the river. And I just wanted to, reaffirm that the non-retention period and all of that stuff has been modeled in. And I'd also submit that we've incorporated more recent data that has some of the highest catch rates and handle rates that we've seen on Chinook over the last few years. So with that said, I think that, barring some new records, we should be covered there. But when we do incorporate this new high catch rate data, it does kind of beef up the handle numbers, and just wanted to let everybody know that that's all the modeling occurred with those numbers. So hopefully that makes sense.
Yeah, that does. Thank you, Q. That's helpful to know that we have a higher degree of certainty of having coverage for those coho fisheries, given recent trends.
Yes.
Hey, Ryan, this is Jeff. Just to add on to that thought there, that the table that you're showing on the screen right now lists the Chinook release mortalities associated with these different scenarios and the different fisheries here. And since, outside of Buoy 10, all of those have been modeled as non-mark selective, those would, the release morts shown here would reflect what's been set aside for coho time. And I would assume most of or a good chunk of that Buoy 10 release morts would be for coho time also, but some of it would be associated with the first 10 days of the mark selective Chinook target fishery. So not quite as easy to tease those out. Maybe Quentin's got that breakout, but just wanted to make sure that everybody noticed that column on the table there.
Good stuff there, Jeff. Yeah, good point to make. So as far as the split on, what's non-retention and, what's retention, I don't have that breakout, but I do know that I want to say there's about 600 as far as release morts associated with the mark selective piece. It's about 600 of that 2,700. So just for a quick reference, I did pull out for folks to maybe have a better understanding of how the catch starts out down there at Buoy 10, as far as kind of the average daily Chinook handle down there. It's around 30 to 50 fish right out of the gate. August 1. August 10th is about 300. August 15th is about 1,100. August 25th is about 1,400. And August 29th is around 1,500, to just kind of give you an idea of the abundance timing and how the handle goes up as the month progresses.
Thank you, Quentin, and thank you, Jeff. Maybe I'll do a last call. Staff, anything else you heard you wanted to address from comments so far before we move on? All right, I just have one part. Since I heard Liz's comment, I guess I'll go ahead and hit that. The 1 fish versus 2 fish for summer. There's probably some effect there, but catch rates are traditionally low enough it doesn't have a significant impact. So it's a little bit of cost during, one way to also look. So it might buy a day or two, just, top of my head without really crunching the numbers. But that being said, what we've largely heard in the past is that June window is prime time for summer Chinook. So that, if you reduce it by 1, you'd reduce, you might extend the season, but you'd be fishing more when the water temps increase and catch rates tend to drop off. So there is a trade-off from that point of view to keep in mind. All right. So with that, I'm going to get the other handout up. So 1 second. Bryce or Matt, who's going to walk through the Tributary Handout?
Hey, Ryan, this is Matt. I'll just throw my camera on here for a second while we're doing the introduction. I'm Matt Gardner, again, District 9 fish biologist with WDFW. So, Ryan, we'll do a combination here. I'm going to sort of start off with the Steelhead and the Coleman River tributary proposals. We'll switch over to Josh Hollowatz. He's going to cover the Cowlitz, Tootle, Lewis, etc. And then we'll come back to myself to close things out with some of the other proposals we have for the upriver areas. So if that works, looks like you're going to kind of scroll through here. So if you want, I can just...
Go ahead.
Sounds good.
I'll control the screen and just tell me if I'm not moving down fast enough for you.
Okay, works for me. So I think don't want to belabor this point, but Ryan kind of alluded to sort of the Steelhead rules in the last handout. I think we're really just proposing to maintain this year the Steelhead package that we had proposed last year, and which was similar to, as you mentioned, to the past few years. So for the lower areas of the Cowlitz, Kalama, and Lewis rivers, those include nightly closures, July through September, reductions in the daily steelhead limits in July and September, and then fishing night closures during the month of August. Sorry about that. Steelhead retention closures during the month of August. Additionally, moving upriver for our tributaries above Bonneville Dam. So these would include the lower portion of Wind River below Shepherd Falls, Drano Lake, lower white salmon, and the Klickitat as well. For these areas, we've had night closures July through October, and fishing for steelhead closures in the months of July through October. So that's all for the Steelhead regulation. Move down to a Coleman. Okay, so fairly recently, we started up a new Coho, Hatchery Coho program in the Coleman River, and have been getting returns for a few years and evaluating broodstock collection for the hatchery. This year, we are proposing to allow more retention in the lower river area, or in a broader reach, I'd say, of the Coleman. And so this is really going to open the access to those hatchery coho. And below the Beaver Creek Bridge, that's where we had sort of a closure before. And so the way we kind of set these up this year, we kind of have a general statement there, and then kind of a more specific rule as it might appear in our pamphlet. And so this would be from the mouth, basically the whole way up to the West Fork in the Coleman. the Saturday before Memorial Day through March 15th. This would open up adult coho limit of 2 fish. Additionally, we've also had in the past, because we hadn't had any salmon releases, a closure in the Alokaman fishing area closure in September and October, and that was from the weir up to the Alokaman Hatchery bridge, and so that area would open as well this year. And so, yes, the idea here to provide access and more opportunity now that the program has been implemented, and gives us the opportunity to collect some more baseline data through our catch record card system. So at this point, I'm gonna kick it over to Josh, and if you want to go through the callets and your areas.
Thanks, Matt. Introduce myself again. My name is Hoswell Hollowatts. I'm the District 10 Fisheries Biologist for WDFW. And the basins that I'm currently managing are the Cowlitz and Lewis basins. So we are going to start with the Cowlitz. So a little bit of background here, looking at our preseason coho forecasts. There's a little bit of excitement there. But on the Cowlitz, we do have concern about our hatchery fall Chinook return. So our proposed fishery limits kind of reflect that, with from the mouth up to the barrier dam, closed for Chinook retention, but it would allow 3 adult coho, and there's still some jacks in there also, but no Chinook jack retention also. This kind of aligns the fishery rules with our preseason forecast and expected harvest. And unfortunately, the hatchery fall Chinook escapement goal hasn't been met for the last 5 years, and the result of that is below goal hatchery releases for fall Chinook. Restricting this retention should still allow some coho harvest in the low river, but then also provide fish for upper basin reintroduction efforts, and also some selective harvest in the Tilton and upper Cowlitz. The North Fork Toutle, and Green Rivers also reflect robust hatchery coho return prediction starting August 1st to the end of November. 6 fish with 3 adult salmon. One of those could be a Chinook, and that would be a marked selective fishery also. And this fishery would also take into account the closed water areas around the weir on the green while that weir is installed. Moving on to the Lewis. Our fishery proposals to modify the adult salmon limit to 3 adult salmon, 2 of which may be Chinook. And the Chinook retention is not marked selective except for a period during August through September. After that, it's any Chinook. And there is a closure between Colvin Creek and the power lines below Merwin Dam from November 1 to December 15th, and that is to protect spawning brights. And after that, I will turn it back over to Matt for Kalama.
All right, thanks, Josh. Yeah, so moving on to the Kalama, kind of keeping, with the forecast we have for coho returning this year. On the Kalama, currently we're at a 3 adult salmon limit. The proposed rule for this year, so the current rule is 3 adults up to 2 coho. With that sort of larger forecast return this year, we're proposing to just make that 3 adults across the board, and so that would be either species, Chinook or Coho, for hatchery fish. And so again, yeah, this just aligns the rule with the forecast and anticipated harvest, and what the broodstock means for the hatchery programs are. In the Washougal River as well, so another proposal here to increase the adult salmon limit, and another primary expansion for coho. So in the months of August through December, again, this would be a three adult limit, and initially we are proposing to stick with the 1 Chinook as part of that adult limit for the start of the season anyway, which is what the rule we had to start with this year was as well. If you could just jump down a little bit, Ryan. Okay. Yeah, and that rule again, as we've had on other places or other trips we discussed, that's gonna, would maintain our closed areas we have around our weirs. Okay, so let's move down to Drano Lake. All right. So potential proposal we're wanted to take comment on this year would be to increase the adult limit again at Drano up to 2 fish, keep the Chinook portion of that at 1 adult. The sort of thinking we've in the catch record cards in past years, we've seen coho there. In talking with the hatchery folks in the past 2 years, they've seen or had additional numbers show up. Some of the coded wire tag information seems to indicate that's fish that were reared at Willard, and so we'd like to, with the increased forecast this year, sort of allow anglers that opportunity, a little bit added opportunity, sort of a modest increase here in the bag limit, so that could potentially allow for increased salmon harvest. And so kind of laid out there as this dovetails a little bit with the Steelhead regulations that we described earlier. So in the months of August through October, Steelhead would remain closed, obviously, and it would be just salmon. So up to 2 adults and 1 Chinook. And then in the months of November through December, that would, when Hatchery Steelhead came back into play, up to 1 adult or 1 Hatchery Steelhead could be retained. And as sort of a starting point for the season, the thinking there with the Chinook limit is that we've seen increased production at Little White Salmon, National Fish Hatchery, and so we want to sort of work with the hatchery there to make sure the broodstock collection goal is achieved. And then just for reference, below there is number 2. Just kind of wanted to reference this year's the rule we currently have in place, which is for a 1 adult salmon limit in August through October, and then beginning November, December, that turns to a 1 adult or 1 Hatchery Steelhead daily limit. And so, yeah, Ryan, I believe that sort of concludes the tributary proposals that we have for this year.
Appreciate that. So let me put the main handout back up. So 1 second. All right, just gonna get the top there. Okay, we're good there. So with that, so thank you staff for your report there. Just I want to do a check-in with other staff. Any other thoughts or comments prior to opening up to public comments?
Hey, Ryan, it's Quentin. You got me?
Yes, go ahead, Quentin.
I just realized that I misspoke. I looked at the numbers, a number wrong. So I just want to go back and correct myself on that mortality number for the mark selective piece of buoy 10. And I'll just give a little more detail just so it's a little more straightforward. Basically, we're expecting about 1,700 fall Chinook to be handled, about 1,000 kept mortalities. And then I looked at the actual release number, which was around 600, but the actual morts are 125. So just wanted to clear that up.
Thank you, Quentin.
Ryan, this is Jeff. I think there was a question from the main session about current steelhead regulations. I thought maybe we could address that before we dive into this. I think the question was regarding steelhead, recreational steelhead regulations prior to July 1, which we pretty much cover that block. We've also got the June 16th block shown here, but just to make sure everyone's aware, Hatchery Steelhead is allowed concurrent with our spring Chinook fisheries. Permanent regulations allow Hatchery Steelhead through the end of March, typically, but will include the allowance of Hatchery Steelhead in our target Chinook fisheries during the spring. So currently for the fishery downstream of Bonneville, that would be open through this Sunday. And then upstream of Bonneville, Chinook is open we're scheduled to be open through May 5th. So steelhead would be allowed in those fisheries. The daily bag limit is 2, only 1 Chinook, but would be up to 2 steelhead. And then when the spring Chinook fisheries are closed, the area of the main stem downstream of the I-5 bridge opens for steelhead on May 16th annually, 2 fish, daily bag, and the area upstream of the I-5 bridge typically opens June 16th.
Thank you, Jeff. All right, so I just wanted to put out there my thought with what I was hoping to get from public input. Maybe just, staff has worked really hard. Appreciate everyone, the public engaging today. We're taking, your comments, thoughts into consideration. We have pretty, some pretty clear guidance on our commission policies. We absolutely do have clear guidance on our conservation objectives. We have some non-concurrent pieces on policy, but there's some middle ground we're working on, and we believe this model largely gets us there. It does meet, moves us closer to hitting all those check marks. Also providing meaningful fisheries. We believe we have higher degree of certainty. As we heard concerns about the Coho fishery, so we believe we're in a better spot. Washington, understanding Oregon's rule on their Chinook fishery objectives, Washington wants to respect their rules, but we do have some obviously different perspectives, but we believe this model gets us there. We're not really looking to overhaul things, but we do want to hear your priorities, recommendations, concerns that help staff better understand what to consider if we need to make any changes or during PFMC2 as we walk into that. Our goal is to walk in with one model. So those are my thoughts. Tucker, Jeff, Chris, anything else you want to put out there on the table before we open it up?
That's Chris. I'm good. Thanks.
Yeah, so am I, Ryan. Thank you.
Yeah, we're good.
All right, let's open it up. So I know I have Susie and Jody on the list, gonna keep them first. Go ahead and do virtual hands or names one at a time, and I'll put you down the list.
I see Greg King's hand.
Greg King, got you.
Robert Moxley.
Robert Moxley, I have you.
Randy.
Get me Ryan, this is Steve.
And I see Cody Clark's hand. And Jesse Vassar. And Tim Schoonover. Apologies.
That's what happened. I got dropped. So I left with Steve Watrous. Who else did I miss?
Do you have Randy Woolsey, Cody Clark, Jesse Vassar, and Tim Schoonover?
Probably 20 minutes at the most. You guys make yourself home. You want to look at the gun some more? You're more than welcome to.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're gonna mute
Robert Moxley, you're not on mute.
So Mertice again. I have Randy Woolsey. Who's after that?
Cody Clark, Jesse Vassar, Tim Schoonover. I apologize, Tim. I'm probably not saying your last name right. And then there was one on the phone that I didn't catch, and perhaps you did.
So the list
That
I
was
have.
Steve
go ahead.
Watrous.
Watrous. Yep, I have Watrous. So let me go through the list and take names again. So I have Susie, Jody, Greg King, Robert Moxley, Steve Watrous, Randy Woolsey, Cody, Jesse Vassar, Tim Schoonover. Anyone else? All right, let's start with that. Susie, are you on? Can you come off mute? And if you're on mute, try *6.
Yes, hi everyone. Sorry about my absence. I had a brief work emergency to deal with. I'll start by saying I'm in support of Tongue Point being open. And I had a question regarding the dam. How are the water regulations changing during this current Springer season below Bonneville? And is there a predetermined date when water will be released, or how is that decided? Thank you.
Thank you, Susie. Got that written down. Jody, are you on? And if so, *6 to unmute yourself. Jody, are you on the line? Okay, we'll move on. Greg King, you're up.
Can you hear me, Ryan?
Yes, I can.
This is Greg King, Lower Columbia River Chapter of Puget Sound Anglers, Cowlitz Advisory Group, or WDFW Cowlitz Advisory Group. In the north of Falcon, Columbia River 1, we heard public comment on escapement goals and passage of summer Chinooks. We all heard what the tribe said about March selective fisheries here. I wanted to know if staff never commented about any escapement goals or passage. Do you have any comments about summer Chinook passage and escapement goals that we didn't hear? And two, again, we should listen to what the tribes say about March selective fisheries in the Buoy 10 area. And Warrior Rock to Tongue Point has been in place for 2 years, and those impacts affect mid-river fisheries that families participate in. Families don't like to go down to Buoy 10, the weather, boats, boat traffic, boat accidents. So they stay up in that, and I'm afraid that, and Puget Sound Anglers is afraid that with more impacts to that middle river section, that we're going to start losing days, and we're not going to get them back. And that's a valuable fishery for families. So if you could, and we support going back to the summer Chinook, we support a non-marked selective fishery for summer Chinooks from June 16th to July 4th weekend. And, we should be catching and keeping these fish, because I believe the public kind of grasping for straws there with the numbers of escapement and passage. Anyway, those are my comments today. Thank you, staff. Good job, staff.
Thank you, Greg. Robert Moxley.
You got a copy? Just making sure.
Yep, we have you.
Robert Moxley, Columbia River Advisor. So as far as the models, wish it wasn't marked select in the beginning. As far as the tongue point, we need to have that fishery. That fishery is important to the community. Those impacts belong to all recreational anglers, not just a certain entity, okay? It's going to look real bad if we close that this year with a 15% exploitation and a tremendous amount of upriver bites coming. And last year, we kept it open in conjunction with buoy 10, and we managed on an 8 1/4. So we have more fish and more impacts. And there's people that want to shut it down. Are you kidding me? That's going to make everybody look bad. And it's absolutely asinine. So I hope staff considers what I said. I hope staff also considers keeping that fishery open. We've lost too much of buoy 10. The Youngs Bay thing's gone. I mean, how many nails in the coffin do we need? So I appreciate staff's time. Appreciate the opportunity to testify. And that'll be it.
Thank you, Robert. Steve Watrous, you're on next. Steve Watrous, you're next up for commenting. *6 to unmute yourself.
I thought I did. I'm not there?
You're here now.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks, Mike. Hey, good job, staff. As you all well know, if anybody hates marked selective fisheries more than me, I don't think they exist. But having said that, the preseason North of Falcon 2, MR 2021, I support it wholeheartedly. I have absolutely no appetite for cannibalizing a certain portion of the fishery to benefit another area of the river. So that means let's just leave Tongue Point to Lower Puget alone and let those folks have their fishery. Got a couple of questions on the tributary packet. Is this the time to address those, Ryan?
You can, yeah, we will jot them down. And if we can't get to them, we can, maybe follow up offline if it comes to it.
Okay. Number one is the Washougal. I just want to verify that those regulations are for the Washougal and not the Washougal slough. I believe permanent regulations, the Washougal slough, are more liberal regulations of either the main stem or the Washougal. I want to verify that is still intact. Number two, I'm still looking for that Wind River portion. As you recall, last summer, I contacted staff about the Wind River regulations in September. I believe that the regulations that were in effect were a result of rule simplification, and instead of simplifying the rules, it made them more difficult and to understand and to regulate. And it was my understanding there was no biological reason for the change in those regulations. I was told we'd address that during North of Falcon, but I don't see it in the packet. So that's my comments and my questions.
Thank you, Steve. We have those down. Randy Woosley.
Thank you. Geez, I'm almost afraid to voice my opinion here. My opinion hasn't changed about the fairness in the middle part of the river. Hello?
Yeah.
1 second, Randy. We'll mute the line. Okay, I think we're good. Try that again.
Oh, thank you very much. So, what doesn't seem fair is I'm trying to advocate for fairness in that middle part of the river, and there have been numerous requests made to model what that fishery might look like if there was a more restricted tongue point fishery. Might agree that after the model is put out, it doesn't make any sense, but and I also understand how busy staff is putting all this stuff together. But I think it's an important part of the model to be able to advocate for what that might mean in fishing days in that part of the river, and what it might mean for fishing days, from Puget Island to Warrior Rock. That part of the river, especially, has bore a heavy restrictive load over the years, and I think it's time to look at all that information before we make decisions. I also understand that policy and management objectives have been set, but with our fisheries changing every year, this year being a good example of the forecast Coho run, those objectives should be thought of with adaptive management in mind, and giving us what's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck in fishing opportunity. So again, I recognize that there are a lot of people that like to still target Chinook after the buoy 10 season starts to wind down and we shift towards Coho. But that shouldn't be done at the expense of the middle part of the river. Thank you.
Hey Ryan, this is Chris.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Could I just ask a follow-up for Randy?
Go for it.
Thanks. And thanks, Randy. And I definitely take your point about the need to be flexible from year to year to heart. We all know nothing stays the same. But I just want to, I'm trying to get a little more specific in terms of what I heard the request earlier in the more open session about, what would restrictions do, but it's not clear what kind of restrictions you're thinking of modeling. Just the closure during like it had been. Was that kind of what you're referencing, and see what that does, or was there something else?
Well, again, I'm off mute. So I'm not sure what that would look like, but modeled with perhaps tongue point closing September 1st, or closing right after Labor Day weekend, and how many days that might add on to that upper middle part of the river. I mean, if it adds on, it's added on 2 to 3 days just by going from 7-day mark select to a reduced non-mark select. If, and I've heard stories over the years of that tongue point fishery catching maybe almost as much as 40% of that middle part of the river's impacts. So, if that would extend that middle part of the river a week of non-mark selective fishing, that, I don't know, because it hasn't been modeled to my, so does that answer your question, Chris?
Yeah. Thanks, Randy. Yeah.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
All right. Thanks, Chris. Thanks, Randy. Next on the list, Cody, you're up. And *6 to unmute.
All right, can you hear me, Ryan?
Yes, go ahead.
Sorry. So Cody Clark, Sporting Goods, General Manager, and then Fishing and Marine Buyer at Bob Sporting Goods. And I kind of want to echo a little bit of what Randy said. A little disappointed we didn't have a model for if we had that tongue point to Puget Island closure. I do understand Oregon's objectives. Felt like they wouldn't be met with that exclusion zone, yet the last few years that was in place. And then also, as far as the complexity issue goes, to me it seems slightly different reason, but it seems the same as the Springer bubble around the mouth of the Cowlitz that we have in place this year. What concerns me is in years past, that's when that stretch of the river, meaning the tongue point to Puget Island, has been open. There was one year in particular that, yeah, it was real close to a 40% of that middle river quota came right there at that tongue point line. And so, and that is when buoy 10 is close to Chinook, where that fishery remains open. With that being said, what's going to happen if those additional Chinook days, if tongue point to Puget Island remains open like what is currently modeled, what will happen if this middle river goes over their quota early because of that fishery? Is that going to kick us out like has happened in years past for Coho? Is that going to shorten the Warrior Rock to Bonneville fishery? It seems just a little frustrating that this stretch of the river, mainly mainly the Puget Island up to Warrior Rock, it has the most amount of bank access, the highest amount of angler trips, and it's a fishery where all anglers they can participate, be it on the bank or in a 12-foot smoker craft. You don't have to worry about, obviously, the tides or the weather springing up. It's a fishery with a massive amount of boat ramps, easy access. So, I mean, it just seems we're shortening that season for the benefit of a very small portion of the river for those at that tongue point to Puget Island fishery. And I would question, without having a model shown, just, to see, I mean, it's hard to give recommendation for having a closure if it's not even modeled, as far as what the benefit would be if it was like the last several years where there was the closure in place. And I do understand that tongue point fishery is a popular fishery. But for those that are in favor of it, what happens would they be opposed to moving that buoy 10, the upper river, that buoy 10 line? What happens if that shifted up to Puget Island? Would they still be in favor of leaving that stretch of the river? Or I guess, is that as important to them having that fishery open and including it in the buoy 10 portion? I mean, that was pretty much all I had. I know, I believe another individual spoke that it'll look real bad, by closing this stretch of the river with all these fish available. But I would argue that it's going to look worse for the states to basically have that small 10-ish mile stretch of the river open and have that kill a season early for the 40 or 50 miles that are more heavily fished. I do want to thank you guys for all the hard work you guys put in and for the chance to voice some of my concerns.
Thank you, Cody. Appreciate that. Jesse Vassar, you're on next. *6 to unmute if you're muted on the phone.
Thanks, guys. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, thank you. First off, I would like to thank both the staffs from Washington, Oregon for working together and putting these seasons out here for us. I for one would be I'm in favor of the model that you guys provided for us. I am in favor of that tongue point fishery, especially with having a 15% exploitation rate this year. I think that we start cutting zones out, we start doing all these different things. It takes a portion of the river away that we might not ever get back. And I think you can use Young's Bay as a perfect example of that. So I, for one, am in favor of that tongue point fishery. The other thing, I know another gentleman mentioned it earlier. I don't know what the likelihood of it happening, now this year or in the future. But I, for one, also would be in favor of seeing at least some percentage of our summer fishery being a non-mark select fishery there. I think that would help increase some angler involvement in that and provide another meaningful opportunity for the recreational angler. So that's all I got. Again, thank you, everybody, and I appreciate your hard work on this.
Thank you, Jesse. Tim Schoonover.
Thanks, Ryan. I'm looking at it and I agree with staff on this. The numbers look good. The only question I really have is the what if the Canadian and Alaska fisheries come in, where are we going to cut? And, then you get into different sections of the river and to save those Thule impact, but buoy 10 is going to be impacted the most. Is that extending the Mark Select fishery out to the 14th or 15th, or what do we see as a cut, or bringing that season back a couple days? I'd be interested in what staff has on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. It's a good question there. So I'm looking at the time. It's approaching 12:40. I want to make sure we get everyone's comment. If someone has yet to provide a comment but wishes to do so, this is your last chance to raise your hand or provide your name. So I'm gonna just do one more check.
We do have Liz Hamilton's hand and Bill Monroe Jr.
Hello, can you hear me?
Bill Monroe Jr. and Liz. Anyone else?
This is Jody Matthew. Can you hear me?
Okay, we have you there, Jody. So we'll have to get to you. And who was the other person?
Gary Sibley.
Gary Sibley. Okay, last call. Anyone else?
Brian, this is Les Clark. Is there another number to get over on the commercials?
There is. Staff, Jeff or Q, could you reach out to Les and make sure he has that info? And Les, it is in the agenda, so we'll get that to you ASAP.
Thank you.
Yep.
Ryan, I'll do that. This is Tim.
Okay, thank you, Tim. All right. I'm going to start with Jody since he has yet to be able to provide a comment, and then we'll go through the remaining list I have. So Jody, you're up first.
Okay, thank you very much. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Sorry about earlier. I don't know what was wrong with my phone. It wouldn't unmute, but just wanted to say I'm in support of the staff recommendation. It looks fantastic. A full great season for everybody, especially after last year. And I'd also like to voice my support for the Tongue Point fishery. The way you guys have everything modeled looks fantastic and unbelievable. Appreciate it. Thanks for all the hard work. You guys have a great day. That's all I have.
Thank you, Jody. Bill Monroe Jr., you're up, and then followed by Liz.
Okay, you got me?
Yes, we do.
Everybody? All right.
Yes.
Well, good thing Jody got in there. That was good stuff. I tried to get him back on the phone, and looks like he got back in. That's great. I think I can kind of go either way on this, but the staff, that base model looks pretty good. I'm in full support of that. If you were to look at a tongue point thing, I don't even know if you were to look at if buoy 10 closes on the 6th, and then you were to shut down tongue point for 3 days, what that really would be for that middle section. I don't know about that. That's a tough one. But I think the way the base model looks, it looks pretty good. Everything given, you guys have your hands full. And I just want to say thanks. Keep up the good work, and looking forward to whatever happens here. And thanks again.
Thank you, Bill. Liz, you're up.
Yeah, thank you. A little bit on process, but I want to start with something. My husband and I are blessed, our family, my dad, my husband and I are blessed with having a boat large enough to fish up in that area above Tongue Point. We've done it. It's massively wonderful. I get why people like it. It can be so productive. Been surrounded by boats with fish on everywhere I looked. And as Randy pointed out earlier, if the run shows up better, it's actually rougher on all of us to keep within our impacts because we're fishing based on preseason, and more fish means better fishing, and we blow through things a lot faster. To the process point, being called cannibalized when a small section of the river that really does need sophisticated boats and fisheries, eats up impacts from a large stretch of the river that is really more family oriented it's inappropriate. Being called asinine is inappropriate. And so I just, I know the managers have really worked hard to put a clamp on that sort of thing during these calls, but look, we all want the best for each other, or I'd like to think that anyway. But part of the best for each other means to respectfully listen to each other, not to do name calling, and I'm just going to ask the managers to do a little more reminding of that point.
Thank you, Liz. Yeah, we strive to make these, meaningful and fair opportunities for everyone, and we expect everyone to be professional and stay on topic. So appreciate your support for us continuing to do so, and we will continue to try to improve it for everyone else. So thank you, Liz. We have one more comment, then we're closed. So Gary Sibley, you're up.
Thank you.
Yep, we got you.
Okay, thank you again. Just a quick comment about supporting the tongue point opening, and I want to remind everyone that who has children and grandchildren that are trying to introduce them into the field of salmon fishing, what a perfect place that is for the fair weather fishermen, and safety wise for fishing with your children and grandchildren because of the calmer weather and sometimes less crowds because of later in the season. But that is a reminder I wanted to bring up, that for the future of our generational fishing for our kids and grandkids, that to teach them the art of salmon fishing and the art of following the rules, that's a good place to take them. They're away from the great crowds, and it's usually a little better weather up there that time of the year. So I'll get off the soapbox on that, and I'd like to just make a comment and concerns about the Columbia River endorsement. I know that's not been brought up, and I don't know if this is the right place to talk about that, but I feel that the recreational angler has been paid its fair due to that agreement that we made back in 2012. And I'd like to see that stopped if that's possible. Thank you very much for the opportunity. Keep up the great work, guys, and hope to see you out on the river. Bye.
Thank you for your comment. So closing it says we do have a little follow-up, and we're going to end at 1. I'd like to check in with staff on questions you heard. I guess one thing I can address really quickly: what is our summer Chinook escapement based on the model? The model wasn't actually plugged in, but I'm looking at it right now, so you have to trust my words. So the forecast of PFMC Fisheries out of the ocean has a Columbia River run size around 78,000 fish. You subtract out Fisheries to all the way up the river, and you get an escapement past all fisheries of around 34,000. So that includes treaty and non-treaty fisheries in the river. So about 38,000. And that is above the USV Oregon escapement goal. So with that, check in with staff on other questions you heard.
Hey, Ryan, this is Tucker.
Yep, go ahead, Tucker.
Just, I guess a couple things. First, on this question of tongue point to West Puget Island, I guess, from my point of view, sometimes we need to restrict access to areas to stay within guidelines. And when that's the case, that's unfortunate, but we sort of make those tough management decisions. But I would say in general, I'm not a big fan of restricting access to certain areas just on a within, trade. I mean, the fact is that, there are lots of families who want to fish out of Rainier or Kalama, but there are also families who want to fish, out of John Day and some of those other areas, Olokema and Westport. And so, trying to make those choices just seems, I don't know, I'm not tremendously supportive of that sort of concept in general. I would say, though, I do think we sort of looked at that, and I think that, if you close that area for the entirety of the season, so from August 1 all the way through the end of the date, I think it adds like a couple of more days to the area, upstream of Puget Island. So especially it's not a huge additional gain. And, to me, I'm not, really, especially given that, and especially that it's not needed, I'm not, just for me personally, that's where I land on this issue. I'm not in favor of restricting those impacts within one area to trade them to a different area within an area. So I do think the staff has done a great job and worked really hard to make sure that we're trying to preserve and protect the additional coho opportunity that we think is coming. So, I think we've used more recent higher handle rates. We've done these things. So I think some of those concerns, I get it, right? Everybody's a little bit nervous, but we're using the best information we have available, and we have heard, I think, resoundingly that that folks want to make sure that we do what we can to protect that coho fishery. And so, I do want to put my assurances out there for folks that we are doing that. And I guess that's what I have to say on that. Thanks.
Thank you, Tucker. And I agree with what you said. Won't go through it all, but basically, if we're going to be able to meet our objectives, then, I should say our conservation objectives and the allocation's a first step. I believe we will. So I do believe our model has higher degree of certainty for protecting that coho fishery, for example, and the other and the remaining Chinook fisheries. So we continue to get better at what we do. So with that, I did hear one question on what to do, and I think it's an important one. If northern impacts come in at higher rate, what cuts? Because it's going to impact tules, LRHs. And that's just one where we'll have to work, and I think all things will be considered based on the input we've heard from the first and second North of Falcon meeting on fishery priorities. By that we first have to hit our rec and commercial allocations. We have to make sure we're so that means it comes out of both sides a little bit to get there. But like you said, Buoy 10 has a lion's share of tule impacts, so that's unfortunately what may come of that if it's necessary. So hopefully we don't have to cross that bridge, but if we do, appreciate all the thoughts to help us better understand priorities, fishery priorities. So check in with other staff on questions you heard. We got about 8 more minutes left on this call.
Hey Ryan, this is Matt.
Yep, go ahead, Matt.
Yeah, I just wanted to address some of the questions there from Steve Watrous. So in regards to the Washougal rule, yeah, this rule would apply just to the Washougal. It doesn't change anything directly about the regulation in Camas Slough. That would still, the only kind of way it might change it in concept is that the Camas Slough language provides for the most liberal rule between the main stem or the adjacent Washougal River. And so, yeah, it would take just the only change there would be that you would have to make that determination of what the most liberal at the time happens to be. So yeah, it's no substantive change to Camas Slough. Yeah, and then I guess in regards to the Wind River, yeah, we did have some internal discussion around this one, and there's kind of more recently had a bit more monitoring in there of the listed tule population. That's been getting some more monitoring. There was some concern in our internal discussion around that population, and if returning to sort of some ability of non-mark select fishing, what that would mean. And so, yeah, we'd be happy to maybe have some more discussion about that internally and maybe follow up with Steve, maybe offline on that a bit more.
Thank you, Matt. Staff, anything else that you heard that you want to address? Okay, with that, I think this won't be a public comment opportunity, but I do see a hand up, so maybe it's a process or technical question. Justin Hulligard, just want to check in, but if it's a comment, then kind of already closed, but see what you have to say.
Yeah, it was just a question about spring fisheries, so you could address it quick if when we're gonna get some insight of the spring Chinook retention, but that's really all I had. Okay, thank you. I guess since we don't have any other things we're addressing for the second, we're approaching April 4th, run through there, and staff will try to do our best to see where our impacts remain regarding upriver spring Chinook while we are in the middle of PFMC2. So just putting it out there, we're doing multiple jobs at once during our busiest time of year, but we'll do our best. Okay, just Chris, Tucker, Jeff, anyone else, anything, thoughts, parting thoughts?
None here. That's Chris, thanks.
Yeah, this is Jeff. No more for me. I'd just like to thank everybody for their participation and insight today. Always helps to have these types of conversations, and always wish we had a little more time. But I think today was very helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, this is Tucker. Same. Sorry, seeing if my camera will pop back on. I turn it off for just bandwidth issues. Yeah, I mean, these processes are good. We get a lot of input. We had a bunch of input at the first meeting as well. I think it's good to hear sort of, the variety of opinions that are out there. It helps us definitely formulate thoughts and whatnot. The other thing I guess I would just say is that this is, this is the blueprint we're going to take in, to the PFMC meeting. It doesn't necessarily guarantee that the product on the other side will look exactly like this. So I do want to remind folks of that as well. But this is sort of the blueprint and the strategy that we'll be taking into that process.
Thank you, Tucker, Jeff, Chris, all other staff, Quentin, Bryce, Josh, Matt, for all your hard work, help pull this material together. And also want to thank the public, everyone, advisors, for taking time out of your day, whether you're calling in from a fishing boat or you're doing it from home or while you're working. Appreciate all your input. I think this was a very valuable meeting. I understand there's differences of opinion, but I think we learned a lot, and this was a good meeting. So I want to thank everyone's time. This meeting recording will be online, so you can go to that in a couple days on the WDFW North Falcon site if you so choose to. But thank you all. Stay safe, everyone. Hopefully next time we're doing this in person. With that, everyone have a wonderful afternoon, and we'll be in touch.
Nice work, staff. Thank you very much, everybody.